regardless of what you've lived through, no matter how traumatic it is, healing is possible. And having lost two sisters, I think they were so lost in the noise of
Mhm.
how to heal that they lost that the act that healing can happen inside of you. You don't need all of this periphery to heal. Our body has innate wisdom if we can just get quiet enough and safe enough to do the work.
Welcome back to the Power and Purpose podcast. I'm Vanessa Soul, your host. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We have Patricia Noelle. She is helping high achievers heal hidden wounds. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, absolutely. So, I have a signature question that I love to ask everyone. Who are you and who are you not?
I am absolutely here to support a lot of people on their healing journeys. And it's very clear that I'm also here to expose a lot of the hidden abuses that are happening within organized religion. I've tried to give that one back to the universe several times and it won't let me. So that's very part of my clear directive. And who I'm not. I am absolutely not here on this earth to play small. I really have fully activated my gifts to be of service to humanity.
Powerful stuff. That is not a small mission. So,
Yeah.
you're not here to play small. And I can, when you said, I had a visual, I'm such a clear audience, clairvoyant person.
Yeah.
I literally had a visual of you trying to like hand it back. And they're like,
Several
no.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've done it several times and it has not worked yet. So I finally acquiesced and said, okay, I'll take it. Let's do it. So here we are. And it's interesting. I've been in a lot of meditations and ceremonies where that clear directive of what I was meant to do and my path and purpose on this earth. And, I can't tell you how many times I've been like, no, 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 that's not sexy. Give it to someone else. Who wants to talk about sexual abuse and child abuse? This is not something that is really, can I just do the pretty posts on Instagram? But apparently that was not my soul's calling. So, and I think, it might benefit to say once we finally accept what our calling is, when we finally get the call, life begins to flow so much easier in favor of that mission. So,
Just to start off with a little bit of your background, um, how does the work that you do now connect to what you've been through personally?
yeah, I think without to go into a big heavy lift of my childhood, I was a baby of nine, Mormon family, a lot of physical, emotional, sexual abuse. I had a child at the age of 16 that was kind of coerced and seduced through the Mormon church to be given up for adoption. And so when I was really looking, I had gone through a big breakup in my life and I was really on my knees. Like, I need some support and guidance of where to go next. I ended up finding my path to psychedelics. And unfortunately, I lost a sister to a fentanyl overdose, another one to suicide. And after having lived through that, I just knew that I had to really anchor in a higher power, a higher truth in order to continue to go on. And it's been the greatest gift that I've ever been through in my life.
Wow. And we could all imagine like it's heavy, right? Those are heavy
Mhm.
things to go through, especially earlier in life. But what did it feel like? And you may not have recognized this until you were out of like the toughest parts, maybe. But what did it feel like when things started to shift?
It's such a good question. I think I lived so much of my life disassociated, numb, and really detached from others. That when I really started doing the deep healing work and the deep dive, I remember so distinctly, I can't believe I've spent my entire life not being able to feel the depth of love and joy, but also sorrow and grief. I remember so distinctly at the time I was working with a therapist whom I just cherish and adore. And he said to me, there's going to become a time in your life where you won't feel this deeply once you heal these core wounds, and you'll miss your ability to go as deep in these emotions as you've been able to go as I was coming out of kind of my healing crisis. And I would have to say there's some truth to that today because we heal so much. I would imagine it's the same for you. We're like regulating in real time all the time, right? Because we have the tools and resources and how to do that. So we're not really going into the holes and getting stuck the way we used to before having, the resources to find our way through it.
100%. I've
Yeah.
never figured out how to say that.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Just said it in that quote from your therapist. It's so true. It's so true.
Yeah.
And also our capacity changes, like you said, because we're regulating
Mm.
often, but we have built-in practices, morning, night, maybe midday, checking in with ourselves. Our self-awareness has opened up.
Mhm.
And so that kind of keeps, like, I think of like a sink with dirty dishes, our sink may not fill up with dirty dishes the way it was when we first opened
Yeah.
the integration journey or the healing journey, because now we're kind of like washing a dish as we go, so to speak. So, and then when did you start to feel the calling towards the work that you do now? When did you start to transition into the work that you do? And were you in a traditional career before, or did you just kind of start this stuff right out of the gate? How did that manifest for you?
I've always been a seeker in life. I was in the health and wellness space for years prior to finding my way to plant medicines and things of that nature. And it was very clear shortly after I started really doing the deep trauma work that my calling was absolutely to support others on their path to healing and recovery. And so, through that experience of doing my own deep healing, it was just, what do you do at the end of it? Like heal all of these really traumatic wounds and then go sit behind a white picket fence? It's like, no, it thrusts you into service. And it was very clear that I would work in this space as a trauma informed coach.
And what did that look like starting out? Was it one-on-one calls? Did you take any courses, or were you like, how did that open up for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I had a lot of courses under my belt when it happened, but I did go back to school and get my degree in spiritual psychology. And that was probably one of the most informed programs that I've been through. I did a lot of my own healing through different course curriculums, etc. And then I studied under Gabor Mate for a year. I did a 2-year shamanic training. And I really took the mother of deep dives of, I'm being trained now in attachment styles and really wanting to bring a comprehensive approach to how I support my clients because the majority of my clients are pretty affluent and also emotionally intelligent. And so to really help expose the shadow or their blind spots, you have to be proficient in what you're supporting others on their healing journey.
So it looks like courses, because you were doing your own stuff and studying under say his name again.
Gabor Mate.
Gabor Mate. Yeah, that's like incredible.
Mhm.
And so did you kind of come out of that just like super clear, or was it kind of just like all falling into place like one piece at a time?
Oh gosh. No, it wasn't clear at all. It was years of like asking, what am I meant to be doing? Because I think when you begin your healing journey, oftentimes it can feel like this absolute free fall where you're really just upended from feeling connected to anything. And, for me in that space, I also was just like, how long is this healing crisis, so to speak, going to last? And I think so long as we're open and we continue to ask and to be in service of the universe as opposed to pushing our own agendas, it may sound cliche, but there's some truth in when we really let go and allow the collective energy to guide us where we can best be of service. I mean, that's really where the magic happens. And so I think for me, I knew that I wanted to be in this space and I continued to be open and just putting one foot in front of the other. Yeah. And eventually you find your path.
I love talking about that phase of becoming because so many people, when we're listening to podcasts like this or other people, we hear like how their early life was, and then we see like their successful work and purpose or their
Yeah.
that. And then a lot of the pieces in between, we kind of just assume like, oh, maybe it was just easy for that person. Maybe it was like
Yeah.
overnight. So I love that you shared that with us, that it wasn't super crystal clear, even with you doing work for yourself and doing training and courses and studying and becoming trauma informed, there was still like this ongoing question. But it sounds like you might have just trusted the flow and then ended up, in the sea, like in the wave.
I love that you're bringing this up because it's part of what I really feel is a spiritual bypass by so many in the spiritual space or healers, etc., where it is kind of like, oh, it's all love and light, and here we are. And, no one's really, really talking about what it's like to be deep in the trenches. And if you have childhood abuse and you decide to walk this path of healing or even traumatic adult experiences, loss of a loved one, a spouse or sibling or parent, etc., those experiences shape who we are in the world. And oftentimes, no one really wants to see us in those darkest hours. And so it is like this gap and this space between those two places of, where we are to where we're going, and the depths of pain and suffering and being turned inside out as you start to do the work. And I think that's why I talk so much about integration after doing psychedelic experiences or other healing journeys is 80% of the work. Like that is the meat of our work, right? And so I deeply want to honor this question and how important it is to listeners to really, really honor their own curriculum, as I like to call it, and their journeys of when you're in the muck.
Yeah. And it sounds like the tool is integration.
Yeah.
That's like 80%. I love that you're saying it's 80% because
Yeah.
people might think we know the 80-20 rule kind of just shows up as a universal formula. I mean, even in real
Mhm.
estate, I used to kind of do 80% this and 20% that, and that would make up the thing. But I think people might assume that integration is like 20%.
Mhm.
But for you to say it's more like 80%, just say this is not like a rule, obviously, everyone,
Mhm.
but we're kind of giving it a range so we can understand
Yeah.
the significance of integration and trusting your path. And it is um, pretty heavy. It can be pretty.
Yeah.
I also had sexual trauma in my
Mm.
youth, and so and it was so deeply repressed. It wasn't
Yeah.
until those retreats, the integration, the deep work, working like one on one with like high level shamans and being a part of like all of the communities, that I felt safe enough for some of that to even surface.
Yeah.
So it's such important work that you do. And this is a great segue. I wanted to get just a highlight of maybe 3 to 5 things that are most common for successful, high achieving people when we're still working through um, the big T traumas from earlier in life, whether it is directly sexual trauma or something just as traumatic.
Well, I think, I'm a perfect example. So I think there's no better place to share from than my own personal example. And I think one of the things for me, my outward appearance was always perfectionism. If I can be perfect enough, successful enough, presented enough, eloquent enough, educated enough, all of the things, then all be enough, which was really masking my earlier childhood experiences that the majority of them I didn't even have memories of. And then I started experiencing really significant health issues and burnout. And and I think one of the ways that it really started showing up for me, and something that we don't often talk about, but for women, it happens a lot in their late 30s and 40s. They finally got into a place of stability. They may have raised their children and now they're not out of the infant stage. They're able to kind of take care of themselves by going to the bathroom, etc. They're married, and all of a sudden, their repressed memories start coming to the surface, and it comes out in really um, odd ways. So, for some, it can be really feeling fatigued, anxiety, flashbacks in dreams, and they don't really understand what's happening. And then you throw in, let's say, a loss of a loved one, perhaps a parent passes as you're getting older in life. And all of a sudden, it's as if they're having a midlife crisis. But from the outside, they have everything that they should have: the cars, the house, the wife, the kids, the job, etc., career. And so I think that in that place, there's this confusion around really what's happening. And I think that I love the saying, don't ever waste a good trigger, because there's something underneath it. And so it's an opportunity to be curious. And I think too, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, and your teacher could be a myriad of things to walk you through that healing experience.
So powerful. And just to recap, some of the common challenges can show up as perfectionism, and we could even bucket that as a self-worth
Yeah.
challenge, because
Mhm.
now we feel like we have to be perfect. We have to do something in order to be worthy, in order to be
Yeah.
seen, heard, accepted, etc. By the way, I totally related to that one.
Yeah.
And then I think the second thing that you were saying was the health. Like the body
Yeah.
remembers it, the body
Yeah.
keeps the score, and so when you start
Yeah.
feeling fatigued, burned out, health issues, and then I think I'll just add in my opinion that that's
Yeah.
nervous system challenges will really
Yeah.
show up. And for me, I kind of created an addiction to regulate my nervous system, because I didn't know why my nervous system wasn't regulated.
Mm.
I knew what the quick fix was, which just happened to be coffee. And so I know
Ah.
addiction sounds petty, but for me it was really serious because
Yeah.
it kept like exaggerating, because I felt like some things were trying to come up. And I'm super intuitive and in tune. And I'm like, no, no, no. If I just get more into the hustle energy, more into the busy energy, more into the beta brain state,
Mm.
I won't feel where I'm disconnected. I won't feel what's like trying to surface. And so that brings me to my next question. Now that we identified some of those common challenges, is how does the nervous system play a role in trauma and also the healing stage?
I never thought I would be so tuned in to the nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. I am just coming up on 3 years of a brain injury. And I did not really realize the importance of a regulated nervous system to the extent that I do now. Until you become completely dysregulated, regulation is absolutely the key to your health, longevity, vitality, sexual energy. I mean, everything, it is linked to all of it. And I think that we're in a culture that's constantly, unconsciously numbing. And I thank you for your transparency and honesty about having a coffee addiction. I'd love to learn more about that, by the way, because it seems like such a counterproductive addiction to have when you're dysregulated. So, but then so is alcohol, and so are some of these other substances. And so, for me, regulating my nervous system after being really grossly injured, everything became a factor in dysregulation or regulation in my life. And so it's like now I can be around people and instantly it's a contraction or an expansion, right? And I like to think of it in terms of, our body is a tuning fork and it's constantly informing us of what it needs, whether it be food or sunshine, exercise, supplements. If you listen and can really tap into that internal wisdom, that is the key to really refining our experience here and regulating our nervous system. And so I believe that we all have that innate ability. Some of us need some guidance on it, whether it be breath work, yoga, etc. But I'd love to hear also from you. One of the things that I do is punt back questions if you're open to it.
Love it.
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing that I'm so passionate about is talking about the experience, specifically with women of earlier child sexual abuse, and how that correlates to dysregulated nervous systems and how it correlates to it showing up in really extreme ways when you absolutely least expect it, right?
Mhm.
Can you share, and I'm happy to piggyback off of it, how did you connect those two things? Like, wow, this is unhealed trauma, and I need some interventions to support me. At what point with your coffee addiction did you go, wait a second, I'm missing something here, and I've got to like tune in to this other um, aspect of what's happening to my physical body?
It took a lot of time because we all have habits in our day, and
Mhm.
some of and we could recognize like, yeah, this habit is like not 100% healthy for me. Like I get the jitters, or you kind of know that you have like your body or the food or the beverage is like not letting you back all the way. But it's kind of just like, okay, how long is this happening, and like how much is it really impacting and interrupting with my well-being? I think it really took time because coffee can be wrapped up in so much productivity. It's like, I was getting my master's degree and I'm like, okay, I have an 8 a.m. class. So like, I'm just grabbing coffee for that. And then 12 p.m. would come and like, oh, I have another whatever full set of classes for like the rest of the day until 10 p.m. So it was kind of just like this, certain seasons of my life, it just seemed like it was a supportive habit. But then when I didn't have that high demand as much, when I had more space, I was still attached to the stress of it. And then it was almost like I was addicted to the hypervigilance
Mm.
of what the coffee or how my body interpreted the caffeine hit. And then
Mhm.
it's like, okay, wait, why do I enjoy being hypervigilant? Because that's like not a regulated state, but I feel most comfortable here. And I was also deep into my healing journey. And so I was, learning that part of my hypervigilance probably came because I had a younger sister really quick, just she had epilepsy. And so sometimes we would wake up, she would have a seizure, and I would be the one, we shared a bedroom. I would be the one to go tell my
Mm.
parents. So it's kind of like I had to kind of unpack life experiences. And so, yes, that is a traumatic for me to go through. I don't know how old I was. It might have been like seven-ish or so. But that wasn't the only thing. And so as I started to integrate each experience one by one, and then the coping mechanism was still there. In some cases it got worse to where I remember one day I had 5 coffees and I was like, this is not okay. Like there is something
Yeah.
wrong. It got to an extreme in a certain season of my life. Um, the repressed memory still wasn't safe enough to come up until like
Yeah.
years after that, but I just knew something wasn't right. And just keeping that awareness, like, okay, for right now, all I could do is moderate myself and make sure I'm not
Mhm.
doing the 5 coffees. I'm not
Mhm.
exactly ready to quit because I do feel like the coffee gives us like the fake dopamine and the benefits, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I guess hopefully that answers your question. It took time. I think integrating life experiences one by one. So it's kind of like process of elimination. Like, okay, I'm integrating this, and then I integrated that. What's left? Doesn't feel like there's anything left. And then I just started going deeper into my meditations and my medicine journeys, and really just being like ready. Like, I still feel out of alignment, universe. Show me
Mhm.
what's up. Like, what do I need to integrate now? What do I need to align? Because I have this habit that I'm over relying on, and I'd rather just be self-reliant. And then it just kind of came through on its own timing.
You said something so important and that I can't pass up and to really highlight again is, the memories, it wasn't safe enough for your memories to come up. And I think that's something that it's when we get to a place of, and that's what I was trying to touch on earlier. It's like, it's when we get to that place where we have some stability, that's typically where we feel safer in our lives. And then out of nowhere, when you finally feel like you've gotten to that like threshold, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, shouldn't I be enjoying my life? And it's like all the repressed memories finally feel safe enough to come to the surface. So I really appreciate you identifying it in that way. Thank you.
Yeah, and then quick little add on, and because you're a psychedelic guide, you might enjoy this. It was recent, like probably a year and a half ago. I had a moment where I was like, "Ooh, I'm gonna tap in and do like a ceremonial mushroom ceremony for myself." But I'm thinking it's gonna be like channeling and light language and like doing like the fun healing on myself. That was my intention going in, and then it took me all the way into the depths of whatever the probably hopefully it's the last deep trauma that was repressed, but that one just came up. But I was so safe, right? And that's when I felt like life is good. Exactly what you just said. I was literally thinking that it was a Friday night. I'm like, yay, business is rolling, everything's good, everything's good. I'm gonna tap in and just like communicate with my guides and mushroom will create that container. And then it's like, oh, let's turn over this big rock that you've been waiting for.
Exactly. And I think too, it's like until I find with the medicine that the first entry point that it will bring us to is what we haven't processed yet. It's like, oh, wait a second, you want to commune with your angels and your guides and, the collective consciousness. But first, we have this little bit that you've got to contend with. And so I think that that's a misconception with a lot of people of like, oh, I'm just going to go have this mystical experience. And that's one reason why I really don't use these indigenous medicines recreationally, because with my history, I never knew like, okay, is it going to be laughter and giggles or am I going to be like back in the gutter like in my past having to process. And if I was in an environment where it wasn't clear whether or not I would have the space to really go into a full therapeutic process, it just wasn't really worth it. And for me, that's just how these medicines work for me. Hopefully, as you said, in time, we kind of get past having to do that deep, deep, deep dive.
Yeah, yeah, and by the way, yes, absolutely, get a psychedelic guide because it's too much for us to be our own guide in that space.
Yeah. Yeah.
And your brain can loop. You can get
Yeah.
stuck. you
Yeah.
mentally, physically, energetically, spiritually. So yeah, do it with some discernment for sure. And I like that you brought up a misconception around psychedelics and healing. Are there any others, one or two other misconceptions around psychedelic healing? And then I want to kind of talk about some misconceptions that people might have around addressing the trauma.
Yeah. I love this question. Um, 100% psychedelics will not save you. It is not a magic bullet. And I think so many people go into this healing space thinking, I'm going to go do ayahuasca or have this big 5-MeO DMT trip, and that's all I'm going to have to do. But really, it can be a dangerous game to play. I think also I look at it, my sister, before she took her own life, had started dabbling in the psychedelic space. And I've known a lot of people in the psychedelic space that have also taken their lives. And I don't want to go really to the darkest place here, but I think it's important that so many people go wanting to have this experience and then they crack open this well of trauma, and without a trusted support, container around you, I mean, it's a little bit of, it can be risky. And so I really just want to tell people I wholeheartedly believe that psychedelics saved my life. 1000%. And I also had a team of ethereal, energetic, and physical earthly angels supporting my healing and putting me back together. And I was completely devoted to that process. Um, I think some other misconceptions in it too is that the work with psychedelics is easy. I think working with these indigenous medicines is one of the bravest things you'll ever do. And one of the most powerful, if you really hold it with the reverence and the respect and power that these medicines really have and can bring to your life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not easy.
It's not easy. Yeah.
It's like signing up for like like the advanced calculus class.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, there's definitely more responsibility too. And then what are some misconceptions that people may have about healing? And a little bit about my journey too. Like before I was so heavy into astrology, I started off as a healing guide and a little bit different than you, but we have so many similarities. So I just kept running into a lot of the misconceptions or just the resistances to healing. And so
Mm,
what do those look like? Because maybe some people might be able to connect with that and bring some self awareness if they're in that space.
yeah. I think one thing that I often hear is, what does it mean to do the work? What does that even mean? Like, what am I supposed to do? Right. And I believe that a lot of it is showing up with self awareness every day, curiosity, and the determination to actually heal what's underneath. Um, I think some of the other misconceptions and one of my mottos that I really go out with such strength and conviction, regardless of what you've lived through, no matter how traumatic it is, healing is possible. And having lost two sisters, I think they were so lost in the noise of
Mhm.
how to heal that they lost that the act that healing can happen inside of you. You don't need all of this periphery to heal. Our body has innate wisdom if we can just get quiet enough and safe enough to do the work. And I recognize that not everyone has the ability to tap into these indigenous medicines and go on retreats and things like that. So I think it's really important to also identify there's so many resources online now that so many can tap into.
Yeah, yeah, powerful stuff. And for me, I'll just name some of my misconceptions. As I like was just coming into my healing journey, it was weird. I think I had a misconception that it was either going to take too long
Mm,
or but it was weird because at the same time I had this expectation that I could also get a bunch of 20 years worth of stuff done in 1 week at a retreat.
yeah.
So my expectations were like two extremes. And then of course, like I fell somewhere in the middle. And then we know that healing is not linear. So that was my misconception. That it didn't keep me from moving forward, but I think it's something that I constantly had to bring awareness to. Like, wait a minute, why am I getting frustrated with myself? Did I really have an expectation that I would just go to the retreat and come back like completely integrated? you know,
Yeah.
if that's the expectation, let me sit with it. Let me like unpack it and unravel it. So now I just have more space. And
Mm.
so, if you want to comment on that, if you've heard people also have misconceptions around timing or expectations, whether it was too long or too short, feel free.
Yeah, I think, I have one of my closest girlfriends right now unpacking a tremendous amount of sexual abuse that's been repressed. And, it's like every other day she's calling saying, "Oh my God, when is this going to be over?" Right? It's like, I can't do another day. And during unpacking this, you can absolutely feel like you're bipolar, happy, sad, crying, joyful. All the emotions are coming online and it can feel so chaotic. And I think that there is no timeline. Absolutely, your body knows. Like for me, when I went through my healing journey, it was like peeling layers of an onion where I was like, oh my goodness, how many layers are here? And I think our psyche knows that it can only take so much at once. And so it was giving me as much as I could handle at one period of time. And then I also want to bring up something that's so important to relating and related to this is that healing can also become addictive. Oh,
Yes.
I'm on a healing journey. Oh, I'm always healing. Oh, I'm on retreat. Oh, I'm with this therapist. It's like you become addicted to being in that constant space of self, evolving, where it becomes really, really toxic to the psyche. So I just, I can't help but like pinpoint that one as well.
That's important. Yeah. Thank you for sharing it. And it's kind of like this looping cycle. Like
Yeah.
people, they kind of stay in that mindset as like I'm always going to be broken. There's always something I'm going to have to fix, or I'm not ready for my ideal relationship, or maybe not even the ideal relationship. I'm not ready for the next relationship yet. I'm not ready for the next job because I need to heal. I need to prepare. It's like that procrastination, like
Yeah.
getting stuck in that procrastination of like, oh no, I'm not ready yet. And it's like,
Mm,
open up,
yeah.
allow things to happen. Healing and the perfect job can happen at the same
Yeah.
time. Healing and the romantic love situation can happen at the same time. They might complement each other. But yeah, being open to just expanding, and some of the healing I think also happens in action.
Mm,
But if people
yeah.
get stuck in inaction, then
Hmm.
they're missing a part of the healing that needs to happen in the mundane task of doing the laundry without your head being, in overthinking mode, and
Yeah.
you experiencing yourself in a peaceful state doing the laundry. Like
Yeah.
just those subtle experiences of being in action and letting the healing integrate is also part of the magic, which I think is we're kind of saying the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. I haven't put that in those terms either. Healing can really be, it's interesting not to go on a tangent, but it kind of like dovetails. There's been a lot of feedback about Mel Robbins' new book, Let Them. And part of her concept, if you've read it, and I'm, overly abbreviating it, is that, if people hurt you or this, that, and the other, let them. That's on them. It's not on you. And there's been a lot of pushback around it. And it's interesting because I've had some current life experiences. Like I was hurt by a machine. That was provided by trusted providers and also have a lot of abuse in my childhood. And what is the line? And I'd love to hear your feedback on this. What is the line between, oh, that just happened, let them, and really having it catapult you into action of, look, I feel a moral obligation to actually protect others on this path. There's a lot of noise in the psychedelic and healing space, and I think a lot of providers are in deep integrity and there's a lot that aren't. So as you're going through your healing experience, what is that discernment, even as you're looking for providers, which would be like my second question, even to you around this, because you're someone that toes the line so beautifully in this space.
Yeah, thank you for that. I love that question. I haven't read the book, just for the record, but I have.
Yeah.
I knew that it was out, and energetically, I didn't feel like super called to read it. So,
Mm,
or to even hear like other conversations about it. But and maybe this is why, because
yeah.
I can see some lack of boundary in
Mm,
and you already admitted that you over abbreviated. So you guys
yeah.
read the book, because we're in a podcast. We're just kind of doing this just to
Yeah.
get enough context for the conversation. We're
Yeah.
the whole entire book. But yeah, so boundaries and responsibility. I think we
Mm,
constantly need to check in with that. What are my boundaries and what is my responsibility? And if you've had an experience that was harmful to you or that didn't serve your highest good, is it in your lane? Do you feel called to accept that responsibility to speak out, or to
yeah.
address it, or to confront someone gracefully,
Mm,
or whatever the thing is? And then I think boundaries is they go hand in hand. Sometimes you might need both 50-50, and sometimes it's more about, here goes the 80-20 again, 80% boundaries, 20% responsibility,
yeah.
and just gauge it where you're at. And I think in the healing space, in the spiritual space, in the conscious community, we can really resist boundaries and we feel like we're not in light, or we're not believing in someone's potential if we're
Mhm.
asking quality questions, or if we're asking for more information, or if we're asking for proof, or some type of something that will make it credible, so that
Yeah.
we can discern, like, okay, is this a boundary of mine, or do I feel comfortable and confident that this is for me? So I think exercising those two boundaries and
Mm.
responsibilities will at least put you in the right path.
Yeah,
What do you think?
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, um, it's it's such a deep conversation and one that I'm really enjoying having right now. And I think that it kind of comes back to me around the amount of spiritual bypassing that's happening in this space. And I think that no one knows other than you what your boundaries are, but so many people don't even know what their boundaries are. They don't even know how to set boundaries. And so when their boundary is violated, they don't even really understand what that violation is. And it's part of the collective problem in the entire um, experience. And so I think that especially if you're a child of or an adult of earlier childhood abuse, you don't even know how to set appropriate boundaries, right? And so I think that it's something where it is probably one of the most powerful healing tools you can do, and to really understand what your boundaries are and to lovingly and compassionately um, enforce them for your safety and well-being. I mean, and I think doing that really creates a container of deep healing to be available. And it's so empowering, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
It's preserving, it's empowering, it
Yeah.
provides so much clarity. Like, what's for you and what's not for you, like, depending on where
Mhm.
that thing falls in.
Yeah.
And also, you mentioned something, adults with early big T traumas, you know, most of us didn't know how to have boundaries. I would even go so far to say some of us were even punished for having
Oh, yeah.
boundaries, right?
Mm.
Because we were might have been taken advantage of. And so, some of us resorted to that fawn response. We didn't even get to the nervous system, the fight, flight, fawn, freeze states.
Yeah.
But yeah, many of us, instead of standing up for ourselves or having those boundaries when we were trying to learn how to operate in this world with conflicting energies and all of that, it's like some of us just remember being punished. Like, oh my God, the last time I spoke up, or the last time I, asked someone to not come into my space, they punished me, they got mad at me, they made me feel a certain way. So you really have to take emotional responsibility and understand that you're not responsible for other people's emotions.
Mhm.
Set your boundaries, and if they have an issue with that, they're going to have to work on that on their
Yeah.
own. So maybe that's the opposite of what Mel Robbins is saying. Or maybe for me, I'm like, let them feel bothered by your
Yeah.
boundaries
Yeah. Yeah.
and the responsibility, but definitely don't, like, let them invade your boundaries and your responsibility. And then I'll just say this very quick. I'm not going to do a lot of astrology, you guys, but we just came out of a 2.5 year transit where Saturn was in Pisces, and the whole entire thing these last 2.5 years was trying to get us to understand where we need to realign our boundaries.
Mm. It was a tough lesson. Thank you. I mean, if you're going to drop that little nugget, can you please tell us what we're going into? And hopefully it's a little bit lighter.
Yeah, and this is so funny because for you, both
Mm.
of these are happening in your first house, because you have a little bit of Pisces and a little bit of Aries. But yeah, so Saturn, if we're talking about Saturn, boundaries, structure, restriction for good purposes, right? Restricting yourself so that it creates a container and that you could focus. So yeah, with that coming into Aries, it's at 0 degrees Aries right now. Now we are being committed to ourselves. We're putting our
Mm.
needs first. We are creating self discipline so that we can exercise our independence. So now that
Mm.
we've learned hopefully. And we have a retrograde in in September where if some of us haven't learned the lesson, it sounds like you had a hard time. I had a hard time. I'm just going to say it. And so now I'm prepping like, oh, I don't want that to show up again. Like,
Yeah.
let's really work through this. Like, let me bring as much self
Mm,
awareness as I can. But yeah, so now we're coming, Saturn really wants us to take action and get out of
mm,
the ethereal space of like, oh, I'm lost in the sauce
mm,
and the spiritual, I'm out of my body.
mm,
Saturn's like, no, let's get real, be in your body, take action, take care of your body, work
mm.
out, um, take aligned action, and really act on your truest desires. And for some people who are on the leadership path, they're going into this training season for the next 2.5 years of what it means to be a committed leader, either to themselves or family or their communities.
Mm. No, we're all getting in shape for that, those of us that are in this space. Yeah,
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 incredible.
beautiful, beautiful stuff. Oh my gosh. Okay, so and I can't believe we're probably almost out of time. Yeah, we are. So real quick, we've talked about so much good stuff. I think we were kind of wrapping up. I mean, we went through the misconceptions. We went through some of the other important factors just around healing, and boundaries and responsibility kept coming up several times. So hopefully you guys are taking notes, and really hone in on what resonates to you, because I know we're kind of going everywhere. But now I want to hone in a little bit more on the transformation that you provide in your work. Can you spell that out for
Mm.
us a little bit more, and then we'll start to wrap up and see how people can work with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, I am a trauma informed coach. The majority of my clients are, have achieved a level of success. And then all of a sudden they realize that there's something there that they have not addressed. And I work with a lot, both men and women who have experienced earlier childhood sexual abuse. That's not the only specialty. A lot of us have earlier childhood adverse experiences. And my goal is to get you back in the game as quickly as possible. My intention is not to work with you for years. My intention is to work with you, do a really deep, intensive, do extensive integration and get you back in the game. Um, and then my heart passion is I have an orphanage in Africa. So I have 150 babies there that I'm supporting. And that is really incredible. So if anyone is ever called to be of service and to go to Africa and support that beautiful community, my personal email is Patricia Noelle, Noelle.com. And my orphanage is orphansclub.org.
Amazing. Thank you for the work that you do. That is so incredible.
Yeah. Thank
Absolutely
you.
incredible. Amazing. So, any last words of wisdom? It could be a quote, it could just be maybe a big takeaway that you want to re-emphasize from our conversation today, anything like that to leave us with.
Yeah, I think that I love the notion that, from the inspiration of Martin Luther King, that our day, our lives begin to end the day we stop speaking about things that really matter. And for me, the things that matter are the tough, hard conversations. And if you are brave enough to look in your past to have the future you've always dreamed, I promise you it will be worth it. I love the saying that the number one thing standing in the way of every good entrepreneur is their childhood. And I think there's some truth to that, until we heal those earlier experiences that we haven't fully metabolized in our life, it's holding us back from the future that we so deserve. So I wish that for everyone. Yeah.
Yes, that is so powerful. We might have to do a part two at some point, because that within itself is so important and
Yeah.
extensive. Like the people
Yeah.
pleasing that we were raised in,
Oh,
that can show up in our business and like all of
mhm.
this stuff. And so
Right.
we might
Right.
have to do a part two. And Patricia and I are
Yeah.
always in contact, so
Yeah.
that might be coming when we have space for
Wonderful.
it. But it
Yeah.
was an honor to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Mm.
Namaste, everyone. Bye bye. Thanks.